In this video, we're going to see how we can get our UV snapshot that we got from Maya imported into our PSD right here that we're going to be using with nDo. And we're going to see how we can get a start on our ColorID map based off that UV snapshot. So why don't we just go ahead and start looking at how we can get our UV snapshot in. So I'm going to go ahead and get my UV snapshot from my exports folder here. I'm just going to drag and drop it straight onto my document here. That looks really bad right now. So why don't we clean it up? Down here in my layers menu, I'm going to take it all the way to the top, outside of the normals. In fact, let's collapse normal for right now. We're not going to be using it in this video at all. So we have our UV snapshot, but we need to make it a layer. So we can go to layer and flatten image. Oh, nope, you don't want to do that. Actually, I'm going to create another layer. I'll show us how to do that. The way I like to make things active is I just like to create a layer, select them both, and Control E to do combine them together. Now I have an active layer right here. So it's the top layer. Why don't we go ahead and name it UV snapshot? And we need to do a few things to it. We need to invert the color. So let's go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. So now it's black on white rather than it just being this big dark thing. Next, we need to set the layer blending mode down here to multiply. You see it right there. So what that gives us is everything that's white basically turns invisible. Everything that's black gets drawn 100%. And look how nicely our UVs are overlaid on top of all of our UV islands. It works really well. You may even want to lower the opacity of your UV snapshot so you can see the normal detail underneath it a little bit easier. And we can still make out those normal details. So, around 50 is okay. You can always play with that depending on your current need at the time. Like, do you need to see the normal map a little bit underneath the normal or UVs, or do you need to see your UVs big time? All right. So that's basically how we set up our UV snapshot. And I'm going to lock it for now. It's probably a good habit to get into. Because really, after we create our ColorID map, it's just going to be used as reference. We're not going to be editing it at all anymore. So I like to keep mine locked. All right. So the next thing we need to do is start creating our ColorID map. Whenever we take this into nDo to start giving our model some color, ColorID maps are the best way we can start separating different parts of the model out. So if part of your model is like a rubber wheel, and then the next to it is like the metal axle, you can use your UVs and basically paint the details that you want to be different materials in the future. It might be a little hard to understand without seeing it in action here, but just know that we're going to make solid color masks to basically give detail to, or be able to distinguish the detail in materials on our model here. So first we got to get a base mask going on. We need to be able to go in and just start coloring in our UV islands. There's a quick little trick we can do using the magic wand tool. So I'm going to go ahead and show us that now. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to put it underneath my UV snapshot, and I'm going to call this Master Mask. All right. There's a few ingenious steps here. First is let's unlock our UV snapshot. We need to be able to go in and use these islands to our benefit. All right. So we're going to go in and let's move our nDo stuff out of the way so we can see our toolbar. Let's go and grab the magic wand tool right here. So up here you want to grab, it might be the quick selection. So just go and click and hold and select your magic wand tool. So the beauty about this is if we are on our UV layer, see how I have my UV snapshot layer selected, and we just click in some empty space, see how we got this empty space, no islands really, then our selection selects all the islands basically, or all the negative space in our UV map right here, okay? So this is brilliant because you can already see it's kind of selected all my UV islands in my UV snapshot layer. So what we're going to do though is we need to invert, because right now the actual selection's the negative space here, or the dead space. So if we go to select and go to inverse, now we have selected the insides of these islands and the negative space is no longer selected. We have one more issue to handle, and that's, see how the selection is really riding our UV borders here, but remember how we overdrew our normals? Remember, we need to give our UV islands padding so our textures can bleed over as well. So now we need to account for that with our selection. So that's easy to do. Let's go to select, modify, and expand our selection, because we need to make it a little bit larger to encompass that padding right there. And let's do about 7 pixels. And there we go. You can see now all my selections have grown. And for all purposes now, our islands are going to have that edge bleeding taken to account. Excuse me. So let's go down here and look at my layers now. I'm going to select my master mask now. And I'm going to just select a black swatch over here in my color. You know, we'll start out with just making a big black mask. And then we're going, with your selection still marching, the answer still marching, you're going to hold down Alt and Backspace. And what that's going to do is obviously fill in our selection with black. And we've effectively made a bunch of basic masks for our texture. So we can get started making a color ID map by hand really quickly. So you may find though that if I lower the opacity of my master mask down to like 50, you may notice though that if your UVs are kind of close together like I have mine here, your islands basically are going to bleed together. So you may have to go in and hopefully your islands are a little bit spaced just a tiny little bit farther apart than mine, but you may have to go in and manually delete or go in and shave some of that down. All right. So after you make these islands, go through and fix troublesome areas where the island mask, like right here. See how our mask just bleeds together? Just go in and separate them with your erase tool. Let's make sure we have a hard round brush right here. So you can just open up your general tab, your general brushes, and let's select that hard round. And hold down with our eraser tool selected, just shift, click, hold, and we can go straight across. So remember, the shift and hold does horizontal and vertical deletions. And so we can use that method to go through and, or here's another method, click without shift, now hold shift, and it kind of cuts at whatever angle it connects the dots. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time doing this myself, and I want you to pause the video and do that now. And I'm going to pause the video, and I'll come back. So I went in and did a few quick paints. I might have missed some things, but for the purpose of this video, you should know that all your islands should be isolated. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to study our normal map, and we can see some of the details that we kind of have baked into our normal. So you can see here is like the end of a gun, and we should probably break some of these details up into their own layers as well. So if we want to go into nDo2 and give them different materials, textures, we can do so with ease. So I'm going to go in and let's start with this little Gatling gun front to begin with. So I have a layer called Master Mask. I want to create a group right above it, and we're going to call this Masks. And I'm going to drop Master Mask right there, and we're going to make a series of mask or basically color ID layers, and we'll be able to get all that color ID information in early. So with something like this, I like to think in circles and in layers. So the first circle I'm going to make is I'm going to kind of encompass the entire inset of this Gatling gun. So I can give it kind of a dark, dingy, kind of in between a bunch of machinery color. I think it should be a little bit different than the outside. So I'm just going to actually, since this is a circle, I'm just going to grab a brush and expand the size and basically just kind of match the circle as much as I can. Now, it might not be exact, so you might have to go in and fiddle with some pixel values. You can also go to the selection tool and select the elliptical marquee tool, and you can hold shift to drag at an angle, or let's see, or alt to kind of grow it from the center. But if you just hold alt, you can kind of make it elliptical, or you can hold alt and shift to drag from the center and make a perfectly round circle. So that's perfect, like so. And basically, I'm just going to start picking random hues and colors. So I'm just going to pick a really bright red right here. And again, with our selection going, we hold down Alt and backspace, and we just fill that detail in right there. Let's bump our opacity down so we can see the normal map underneath it. And let's go in and figure out how to do all these barrels of the gun real quick. I'm going to make another layer for this. You can name these layers if you want to be ultra organized. Gun, base. I'm not going to spend too much time thinking of good names. It's just for future reference. So in layer 2, I'm going to pick a new color. And why don't we just start selecting these. Yeah, I don't like drawing these circles like this. All right. You can move by holding down after you make your selection. Hold down Control, and then select any of the marching ants. But I think it might be faster in this case if I just maybe found a brush size that fits. And there we go. So I'm just going to go through and be as exact as possible. I think I might have messed up there just a little bit, like so. And then this big one in the center. I think I might use the selection tool for that one, because it's got a nice little center point here. And I might need to make it elliptical too, just a little bit. All right, and there we go. So you can see I still have some of that red mask down below it. All the gun barrels are kind of selected in their things. Gun barrels. All right, so oh yeah, we have one more thing to do actually. So let's select both these layers with a shift click and turn their opacity down. I kind of need to select the inset wells of the inside so I can color them a little bit darker to give the illusion that it's a little bit deeper. Gun holes. And for this one, I think I'm just going to try to find a size that works again. Perfect. Let's bring out a new color. And let's just fill in those holes. So our normal map can give us a lot of information on how to create our color ID maps by hand if that's the way we choose to do it. You could assign materials to these faces in Maya to your high poly map. There we go. There's a color ID there. You could assign for your smoothed out mesh. You could assign different colors and materials to the faces, and then bake a diffuse map, and you can get like this kind of map kind of baked out for you based on materials in Maya. But if you don't have that much, and or it's more tedious to go in and select all the faces and change them colors inside of Maya, you can definitely make it by hand too. So I'm going to introduce us to how to use the pen tool to make really exact curve selections here. I mean, I guess if you had a stylus and you had a steady hand, you could. I'm just going to pick another color. You could come in and paint out this cockpit detail, you know, so something like that. But you might just end up wasting more time than you kind of want to. Or if you get really good with the pen tool, you can be really fast at making selections organically, and since it's basically using algorithms, they're infinitely scalable. So pen tool has a lot of uses, but in this case, we're using it to select some organic shapes. So I'm going to click outside in here to start out, and there's a few different pen tools we can use to really make this a fast process. So I'm going to zoom in and show us our pen tool. So there's the traditional pen tool where you can just select points, and then you get these little arms that you can go back in. If you hold control, you can go in and move and rotate and edit and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a pretty versatile tool, gives you really great control. But Photoshop has this new tool called the curvature pen tool, and basically you just connect the dots, and it figures out the most breezy curvature for you. So you can just basically click, 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 and it'll basically get the shape you want for you. So what I'm going to do here is turn off my UV snapshot so I can follow my normal map a little bit better. And you don't want to do too close together because you don't want to spend all your day here doing this. But you definitely don't want to do too big because it may not describe the shape. That does pretty good there. All right, and then this is important. When we get to a corner, just double click, and it creates kind of a sharp thing. And we can always go back in here and edit and add another point to fix that up. And then it's just clickety click. So really easy to make a nice smooth selection. And to finish the curve, we go back to our origin point, and you can see a little circle pop up. So we've completed our shape. We're not done yet. Let's go back in and fix right here. So we right click and add an anchor point, and then we can hold down control and move it around a little bit. All right. And kind of just choke up on that detail right there. So anchor points work pretty good if we get them close together. Oh, that looks really good. And then we got a little weird thing going on down here. So let's just bring this out. Don't worry too much about what's going on over here. We'll fix that a little bit in a second. And yeah, I think that's what we want to see. All right, great. So now what we'll do is we'll go to selection up here at the top, and it'll give us let's do a feather radius of 1, and we just click OK. And now we have a selection of what we just masked out. And why don't we create a new layer down here and just press Alt and backspace, and we're basically drawing out the glass on our cockpit. All right. And why don't we just go ahead and do the same thing down here with our new pen tool. We know it's pretty easy. So I'll click here, double click so we can get something a little straighter. And then it's kind of following. Let's see. All right, let me start that over. Let's just single click. I think as soon as you start messing with like the, there we go, double click on that corner. And we'll go back in and fix those anchor points in a second. So right here, it's got a little bit extra detail. So I want to make a few more closer together anchor points. And then let's close it off. And then let's hold down control, and after we close it off, let's go back in and fix these guys down here. So let's do that. And then let's bring this down so we can describe this shape just a little bit better. So, you could spend a few minutes drawing this out, Or you could just get comfortable with the pen tool, and now you have something that's infinitely more accurate and honestly faster to use. So remember, that's the curvature pen tool. It allows you just to click things rather than drag and adjust the hand. So we got all this junk right here to deal with. See how it's overlapping in the other map? So here's the brilliant thing about these masks that we're creating. If you hold down Control and click the thumbnail, then you get a selection of basically all your UV islands. And anytime we want to get rid of some of like negative space, like some junk that we just drew here, we'll select our master mask layer with Control left click, and then we'll do an inverse selection and press delete, and that'll clean up all of the stuff on our cockpit layer. So let's call this cockpit. And then we can just go in by hand and just delete this part. That'd be real quick to do. Marquee selection will be good. I'm still using circles. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to basically make a mask for the bracing around the cockpit. So I'm going to go in and do cockpit brace. I don't know what else to call that. And it'll be a little bit quicker since we already have some shapes to help us figure that out. So let's grab our curvature pen tool one more time. And I'm going to try to follow this outside of this dark line right here. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to follow the inside of this valley, because this is still technically the kind of the outside of the cockpit. So we'll go right there, and hopefully we'll start getting some nice curves. Nice. So I'm following just on that wider side, brighter side, lighter side of this cockpit. Nice. See how far down I can go. That's a little too far. So remember, the easier, the less change in detail, the less direction you got to change, the farther apart you can put your anchor points. When we come down to something right here where the detail kind of shifts rapidly, or the path shifts, we have to support it with some more anchors than we normally would. Perfect. So let's go back up and close the loop. And let's double check our curve paths. It's a little weird right here, so let's clean it up a little bit. It's a really cool tool. We don't have to worry about those handles or anything anymore. All right, I'm happy with that. So this we've named our new layer cockpit brace. Let's go to selection 1, and again, let's choose another color, like so. And you know what? We could probably put that underneath there. And wouldn't you know it? If we go in and select our master mask, an inverse selection, Control Shift I, it does an inverse selection for you. Since we basically drew our cockpit on top, now we have our brace. So this is kind of the idea you get. And I already completed a color ID map. I just wanted to show us a few tools to get us there. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my color ID map over here. You can see how I kind of have different areas sectioned off a little bit more. And then I'm just going to control or select all and just press copy. And then I'm just going to bring this and have kind of like a final map right here. Actually, you know what? This was just for demonstration purposes. It's really good to have all these separated probably into their different layers. So never get rid of these, never flatten these out. If you want to make just a master mask, kind of like I have right here, this is how you'll do it. Go ahead and hold down Alt and drag your layer up one. You'll make a mask copy of that layer. All right. Make sure your opacities on all your layers are set to 100. So I just select all the layers and then shift it down and up to 100. And then Control E will combine them all together. And now you have a master mask yourself while still retaining all the individual layers here. All right. So that's a lot of information to come into you, to your head. So really the core things we need to learn is we can get our UV maps in here, and we can then start drawing out some color ID maps based on those UVs and using some pen tools. All right, so that does it for this video. The next video, we're going to see how we can set up 3Do so we can see our model with its normal map, and in the future see the changes to the normal map that we make using nDo.